There is a force within you that you have never fully met. It sleeps at the base of your spine, coiled like a serpent, waiting for the day you stop chasing external pleasures long enough to feel what has always been inside you. Every time you give in to lust, distraction, or comfort, that serpent sleeps a little deeper. But every time you resist, every time you hold back your energy, it stirs. That stirring is not just biological, it's metaphysical. It is the beginning of awakening something that has terrified empires, priests, and kings throughout history. The merging of male seed and spiritual fire. Before we go deeper, if you want to be part of a community of men exploring this path together, join the free Telegram channel linked in the description. It's where I share daily reflections, insights, and deeper practices for this kind of inner alchemy. The practice of semen retention has always been misunderstood as simply a moral or physical act. But in truth, it is an act of rebellion against a world that feeds on your surrender. Every advertisement, every algorithm, every image that flashes across your screen is designed to drain you psychologically, emotionally, and biologically. Retaining your seed is not about purity, it's about power. It's about saying no to the invisible systems that thrive on your weakness. Around you, men are collapsing into soft addictions. Pornography is no longer an escape, it's a leash. And behind that leash stands a society terrified of awakened men who know how to direct their energy upward, not outward. If this content adds value to your life, consider contributing through the thanks button below. No matter how small, every contribution helps us keep producing this kind of deep, independent content that the mainstream refuses to touch. Science now admits what ancient mystics knew, that sexual energy is not just a function of reproduction but a form of neurochemical gold. Dopamine, testosterone, and oxytocin all converged in the experience of desire and release. When you hold that energy instead of dissipating it, something fascinating happens to the brain begins to rewire itself. The prefrontal cortex strengthens, the seat of long-term vision and willpower expands, and you start to experience life through a sharper, more unified consciousness. This is not religious dogma. It's neurobiology meeting spirituality. Your biology is programmable, and semen retention is one of the oldest software updates known to man. But here's where it becomes more mystical and more dangerous. In many traditions, this retained life force is known as ojas, or spiritual energy. When it rises up the spinal column, it's described as Kundalini, serpent goddess, Shakti, the dark feminine herself. She is not soft, not nurturing in the way culture portrays femininity. She is far as chaotic, creative, and destructive. To awaken her is not to chase pleasure but to face truth. When semen retention and Kundalini meet, the masculine stops, seeking the feminine outside himself. He realizes she was always within. That moment of merging is not sexual, it's cosmic. It's the reconciliation of duality, the inner marriage of Shiva and Shakti. Historically, this was the essence of tantric practice. But over centuries it got diluted into erotic escapism. The real tantra was about energy transmutation, not indulgence. Ancient yogis spent years mastering retention before even attempting to raise the serpent, because to awaken that power without discipline is to go insane. The Kundalini is not a metaphor for comfort. It's an electrical storm within the human nervous system. When your semen, the densest form of physical vitality, is sublimated into that current, it becomes fuel for enlightenment. You stop living as a man of appetite and begin existing as a conduit of consciousness. Now imagine that in today's world, the average man scrolls through dopamine hits every few seconds, never realizing he's in a psychological lab experiment. His instincts are being hijacked by corporations, his biology is being weaponized against him, and his attention span is shrinking into oblivion. In that state, how can the serpent rise? How can he experience transcendence when he can barely sit still for 30 seconds without reaching for his phone? The path of retention and Kundalini awakening is not popular because it requires discomfort. It requires boredom. It requires silence. But in that silence, something holy starts to breathe again. Psychologically, the practice rewires your relationship to desire itself. The modern man is taught to pursue whatever he feels. Follow your heart, they say. But what if your heart has been programmed by marketing? What if your deepest desires aren't even yours? Semen retention begins to detox the psyche. It creates a space between impulse and action. You start to see how much of what you chase is rooted in insecurity, fear, and imitation. As the energy builds inside you, it becomes a mirror. You are forced to see the shadow, the suppressed feminine within the part of you that longs for connection, but has been silenced by shame. That is the beginning of the dark feminine's dance. She appears as discomfort. She tests your patience, your ego, your arrogance. In mythology, this is Kali, the goddess of destruction, dancing on the chest of her lover Shiva. She is not there to destroy him, but to awaken him. Similarly, the retained seed creates pressure in your body, forcing you to face your inner chaos. That pressure is her dance. If you run from it, you relapse. If you stay, you evolve. The dance of semen retention and Kundalini is essentially the dance between consciousness and chaos, control and surrender, death and rebirth. From a psychological lens, this is integration. Jung called it the process of individuation, the reconciliation of the conscious and unconscious self. When you stop wasting your life force, the subconscious begins to surface. Nightmares, lustful thoughts, flashes of anger, all of it rises to be transformed. The serpent doesn't rise smoothly. She shakes the foundations first. This is why ancient initiates often went through intense purification rituals before awakening her. Because when Shakti moves, everything falls within you burns. Historically, kings and warriors practiced forms of celibacy before battle. It was believed that sexual restraint sharpened intuition and courage. Even in science, retention has been linked to higher testosterone and improved focus. But beyond numbers, it's about presence. When a man walks with retained energy, his presence becomes magnetic. Women feel it, not because he's avoiding them, but because he's full, energetically complete. That fullness attracts the feminine polarity. And here's the paradox. The more he withholds, the more the serpent dances between attraction and control. But society doesn't reward such men anymore. Today, the archetype of the awakened masculine is replaced by irony, cynicism, and distraction. Men are encouraged to laugh at spirituality, to dismiss anything deeper than instant gratification. The serpent's dance has been replaced by scrolling thumbs and exhausted minds. Yet, the longing persists. Beneath all the noise, there is still a hunger for transcendence. That hunger is what brings you here, listening, wondering if there's more to your existence than stimulation and sleep. There is, and it begins with stillness. When you begin this path, expect resistance not just from yourself, but from society. Friends will call it superstition. Science will call it placebo. And your mind will call it impossible. But remember, every transformative act in history began as rebellion. The alchemists who turned lead into gold weren't changing metals. They were transmuting themselves. Your semen is your lead. Your consciousness is your gold. Retention and Kundalini together are the furnace that performs the transformation. The moment you commit, life begins to reorganize around your new frequency. Your dreams change. Your desires shift. Your energy becomes concentrated like a laser instead of scattered like smoke. And then comes a meeting with the dark feminine knot, in the form of a woman outside you, but as an archetype inside you. She is the creative void, the chaos that births worlds. When you suppress her, she manifests as addiction, obsession, or emotional numbness. When you awaken her, she becomes intuition, depth, and fierce love. The merging of your retained masculine energy with her Kundalini current births something sacred. Inner wholeness. You no longer seek validation through conquest. You no longer need the feminine to complete you because you have integrated her. That's when real attraction begins, not the shallow kind, but the gravitational kind, the kind that moves souls. Philosophically, this journey is about transcending duality. The ancients symbolized this union as the caduceus sta, intertwined serpents around a staff, seen on medical symbols even today. It represented healing through balance. The two serpents are the masculine and feminine currents, the left and right channels of energy, merging into one central column of awakening. Every time you resist ejaculation, you are guiding that energy up the central channel, nourishing your brain, heart, and spirit. Over time, you stop identifying as just flesh and thought. You become energy aware of itself, but it's not all bliss. The serpent's dance is intense. Some those you feel on fire, others numb and empty. Some those you feel like a god, others like a beast. This is normal. You are being dismantled and rebuilt. The ego doesn't like losing control, so it will trick you with temptations, rationalizations, even spiritual pride. That's why community matters. Surround yourself with men walking the same path, who understand that this is not about repression but transformation. That's the kind of connection we cultivate in the Telegram community. I mentioned earlier a space to stay grounded amid the storm. As weeks turn into months, you begin to notice subtle changes. Your eyes feel more alive. Your voice deepens. People listen when you speak. Your creative ideas flow effortlessly because you're no longer leaking your life force. Your dreams become vivid, symbolic, often guiding you through the next layer of transformation. You begin to sense energy not metaphorically, but physically moving through your spine, heart, and skull. That is the serpent ascending. She's not separate from you. She is you, in her awakened form. Society will still pull at you. You'll see couples posting curated affection online, friends bragging about escapades, media pushing endless stimulation. But when the serpent dances, those things lose their grip. You start seeing through the illusion. You realize the most radical act in the 21st century is to be sovereign over your own biology. And when that sovereignty merges with spiritual awareness, you become unstoppable, not in the aggressive sense, but in the centered, grounded, luminous sense. The kind of man who walks through chaos and brings order simply by being. At the heart of it all, the serpent's dance is not about denial, it's about redirection. You are not rejecting life. You are learning to channel it. The energy you once wasted becomes the energy that fuels your evolution. The lust that once controlled you becomes devotion. The darkness that once haunted you becomes wisdom. The feminine you once chased now dances within you, alive and free. That is awakening. That is wholeness. And that is the forgotten art our ancestors once lived by. So, when you close this video, don't rush to apply techniques or chase experiences. Sit in silence for a while. Feel your body. Feel the energy that's already there. That is the serpent waiting to rise. When say though is your life will never be the same again.